Hello, my soul tribe. Welcome to this video. Today we're going to talk about abandonment, what it is, and how to deal with it. So why are we talking about it at this point in time? We had a Mercury-Pluto transition lately, and I have been talking to several people this week that have been experiencing their wounds deeply because Pluto brings up these deep issues in the forefront of our conscious, and that is the perfect time to deal with them when our subconscious is bubbling and bringing up things to the conscious mind. So I thought about making a special video on this. So, what is abandonment? Abandonment is experienced by a person when a significant person in their life suddenly leaves or has to go away. This can be experienced in childhood. It could be experienced when a grandparent who you are close to suddenly passes away without enough explanation because they could not do that. And it also depends on how that was handled after. Like sometimes parents would say something like, oh, grandpa just had to go and he's just not going to come back. Or it could happen when parents get divorced and one parent leaves without actually having an honest conversation with the child and consistently following up to let them know that they will continuously see them again. It could also be experienced by a pet. When you suddenly leave, they say that pets can energetically communicate and they feel it. Of course, their memory is much shorter than us, but it is a good idea to actually talk to and communicate with your pet that you will be leaving and you are sending them away to somebody new who will be taking great care of them. So abandonment is basically experienced when the communication about the person who is proceeding or leaving is not clear, or the process of detaching that is occurring in the person's mind who is leaving is not clearly communicated. This is perceived by the person being left as a shock because you're suddenly cut off from a significant other, so you feel a sense of being discarded. A lot of people who experience this in childhood or even in their early adulthood carry it into their adult relationships. So let's start with what could be perceived as an abandonment, right? Apart from someone actually leaving, you may also feel abandoned when you're actually living with someone. This happens when you are being stonewalled. Stonewalling is when a person living in your home does not want to communicate clearly and completely either ignores you or acts like you do not exist. And the person on the receiving end has no idea what to do and just feels like you're being treated like you're dead or you do not exist. This is actually a much worse or stronger form of abandonment that is perceived by the psyche because it is continuous and it leaves continuous hope that the next day this will shift because the person is still around. Of course, it's not always done on purpose. There are times when someone who is not clear about communicating about something or does not know how to deal with a specific challenge simply decides to shut off and just do their own thing. So there are many different forms of abandonment. As you can see, there's physical abandonment, there's emotional abandonment, and then there is stonewalling. So now, if you have been on the receiving end of the abandonment, how do you deal with this? Okay. So there are very specific steps to help you slowly get over it. The first and the most important thing is give yourself time. Because time heals everything, even if you may not think that way at that moment. Next step is really feel your emotions. So if you are shutting down your emotions because it is unbearable to deal with them, it's time to now finally feel them. So if you have unconsciously shut them down, how do you start feeling them? Well, start by being quiet and observing your body. Where do you feel that feeling in your body? And then follow that feeling. Is it anger? Is it loneliness? Is it sadness? Don't build those stone walls around it. Just feel it deeply. And of course, cry it out as much as you need to. A great way to bring your unconscious thoughts into your conscious mind is actually by writing it down. So start by writing. There are so many things you may feel like communicating to the person who abandoned you. However, you may not always be in a position to communicate it to them. So what do? You start by writing a letter to, say for instance, the deceased one or someone who left that you have no communication or access to. And you pour everything in that letter, because that brings it out from your unconscious to your conscious mind. And you can continue to write until your pen does not want to stop. Okay? Once you are done with writing that, you can send it to the ethers by either burning it, burying it, and just sending it to the universe with the energy that the receiver may receive your message. And that is going to help you with dropping the suitcase. The burden that you are carrying, it will help you drop that burden. It is very important to finally drop that weight. How do you drop that? By taking responsibility for your life in this now moment. By living in this now moment. There are many ways of doing that. Too many people do not deal with their wounds and just jump from one relationship into another, and that is their way of dealing with abandonment. Some people may also look for temporary solace with others. However, processing it is the only solution to not carrying it energetically into the next relationship. Also understanding that when you are looking to hear from someone or get validated, you are giving them your power. When you are looking to explain yourself, you are giving them your power. When you are thinking about them, you are giving them a moment of your life, and as such your power. Abandonment can also be experienced when you are discarded from groups. A lot of people experience that in work environments. So what happens when you experience that, right? So imagine your power is a big ball of energy that you're holding. Now, when someone abandons you and you continue to think about that, you are actually putting that ball of your energy into their hands. You don't want to do that. You want to take that ball of energy back into your consciousness. This is called taking your power back. It is only when it finally does not matter to you what their perception is when you have taken your power back fully. Or The fact that you wish you could have communicated to this soul, but you cannot because for whatever reason they're not around or do not exist anymore in this third dimensional plane. When you choose to understand that it does not matter is when you take your power back. Of course, it is only after the grieving is done that you will come to that conclusion. Now, what is the third step? The third step is really listening and acknowledging yourself. Stop living in the old story. You may not even have wanted the old story. However, because you feel the abandonment, you are going back into the story. So understand the truth for what it is. Get clear on your emotional responsibility. When you struggle with abandonment, or have been feeling that since childhood, you probably have an intense desire to feel taken care of. Your definition of being taken care of could rely on how good the other person treats you. This feeling is completely legitimate for you. However, it does distort your sense of personal responsibility. You should be the only person responsible to make yourself feel good. And of course, it is important that your significant other or the people in your life are kind and polite and good to you. But that is not always the case. And if you happen to deal with somebody who has a very raw way of communicating and does not know how to either clearly communicate or kindly communicate, then every time they may be triggering your wounds of abandonment. Each time they decide to either say that they are coming and they do not come, or sometimes for people, even someone being late consistently triggers their abandonment wound. Or when they promise that they will show up and they don't. Or when they show up, but then they pay no attention to you and are just doing their own thing. And yes, that is not healthy. However, it depends to the extent to which it affects you. It depends on what you carry as your trigger. So, this brings us into our fifth step. Look at your trigger and get to the root cause of it. This can be done by walking into your inner child and really going to the root cause of when this abandonment wound started for you. Do you have a lot of help with that? I offer inner child healings myself, and I'm able to walk you through your subconscious. You can also try and directly talk to your inner child and access it. But it is important to go back to the root cause and feel this trigger. I'm going to talk more energetically, and a lot of these times the abandonment wound may not just be from your current lifetime, but from your past lives. If you associate with being the divine feminine archetype, you have experienced a lot of wounds of abandonment. And I'm going to do a completely separate video on why and how the divine feminine has experienced abandonment wounds across many lifetimes, and what is the best way to take your power back if you associate with that archetype. So feel free to click on the link below this video to be able to look at that if you resonate with that archetype. And that kind of wound can also be worked upon by going into your Akashic record and releasing it. It is another thing I do facilitate. whatever the reasons and however you address it, it is important that these wounds get addressed. Okay. So here are the different ways in which you may have felt abandonment and how to process them as best as you can. I hope this video was helpful to all of you going through these deep wounds and processing them through these very potent alignments at this point in time. Sending you love and blessings in your journey.